I don't know, man. I think we were riffing, and that was some jazz we came up with. Maybe it was your instrument it ended up coming out of, but I was helping to set the rhythm, baby.
Yeah. Okay. I like jazz. I'll go with that. I like to think that I'm like, I don't know, some famous jazz player and I'm like gigging and killing it. And then you come in with like some cowbell, right?
Welcome back to the hunt for Posey's treasure. This is episode number 13, date of recording August 7th, 2025. Last week, it appears maybe we ruffled a few feathers, but also, endeared some listeners to us, so it was a little bit of a mixed bag coming off of our last episode, our last discussion. Namely, got some corrections issued to me, which I will in turn issue to all my listeners, because as I've said from the beginning, we are accountable. We take responsibility for what we say, and if we say something that maybe wasn't so correct, we'll try and correct it to the best of our efforts. But that said, a bit to dive into this week, most of which is really centered around conflict, emotions running high, arguments, so I don't know where things are going to shake out here. But that said, I will turn to the Cowboy. Cowboy, how was your week this week? What's going on with your latest solve? Where are you at?
Yes. Thank you for that partially lively introduction. I am in our thread of friends that discuss this. There have been some like big Reddit movements, a lot of people coming out with like potential solves and all that. And some of them are quite compelling, actually. I'm not sure if we're going to dive into this one that friend of the pod, Dr. Clown, sent in, but it is in Montana, right near an area that I had been looking at. But he takes it a step further, gives much more detailed location to the valley in which, and a lake area in which that treasure could be. So that's something I was like very fascinated by this week and dug into it. Like, honestly, I read this guy gives his whole solve essentially on Reddit. We should link to that maybe in the show notes. But that was fascinating, and I'd been diving deeper into that. And it is kind of in the general region, just north of the Wisdom, Montana area that I had been kind of fascinated with. So that definitely spiked my adrenaline. We'll keep it a PG podcast. So very exciting stuff. But that's where I'm at. What about you? How was your week in the hunt for Posey's treasure?
I mean, my week was, to be frank, catching up. As I said, appreciate you and the community. Obviously, at this point, likely clear, we aren't, as I've said, this is not our job. Treasure hunting, not our job. Making a podcast about treasure hunting, also not the job. So, full disclosure, things have been a little bit busy, haven't been on the bleeding edge, haven't been, let's just say I haven't been sorting the Reddit thread by new as of late, all right? I'm catching up with the top posts, the best of the week, we could say. And full disclosure, I'm going to be traveling next week. So I don't even know if we're going to have an episode then. I'm going to do my best. But we're doing our best here. So, give us some slack, dude. I'm trying. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, some of the comments, we love all our comments. I relish in them. But also relish isn't my favorite condiment, you know what I mean? So please be gentle on us. We're doing our best over here. We're just a couple of amateurs trying to figure out where $1 million+ are laying in the Pacific or the Western United States. But with that being said, yeah, do you want to dive into some of these Reddit updates? What is the agenda? I know we typically have a robust agenda that's shared pre-show, but what do you think?
Yeah, robust agenda, shared pre-show. You certainly actively contributing to that.
That's right? That I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. But no, here's where we're going to start off. We're not even going into the Reddit yet. We're going to touch on something we talked about last week. Actually, we're going to veer a little bit into Reddit here. But, we touched on last week. It seems that some of the enthusiasm for the hunt, some of the active participation is dying down. People are walking away. As Cowboy alluded to, though, the flip side to that is we're seeing a lot of solves. A lot of people are like, you know what? I'm just going to put this out there. I don't know if I can keep doing this, or I'm going to revisit this, or I don't even live in America, and I've been working on all this, so I will share it. And in that vein, we've had a listener reach out directly from the UK to share their solve. I'll have to check my email, but I asked them if they're comfortable with us going over it. So assuming they do, we'll talk about it at some point. We also, on our YouTube, had a fantastic viewer slash listener. They have their own YouTube channel. They shared a link to their full solve. I was hoping we can go through that maybe next episode. We're not sure. So people are dying down, but the emotions are ratcheting up. And I'm seeing it in the Reddit, but also in our comment threads. Like we didn't have any, disputes, but we've had, I wouldn't say name calling, but we've certainly had some folks in the comments going at it. So I just want to say, y'all, this is a collective action. If you are taking part in the collective, solving of this, we're on the same team here. We're trying to solve this. If you're approaching this as a mercenary, trying to extract every little advantage and bit, you can get and to dismiss everyone, I just don't know, what you're doing. Just do your own solve, then absorb the information. That was kind of an addendum. And then, as I said, I'm catching up. So I appreciate the insights or clarifications from you all. Just, don't add insults to them if you don't mind.
Yeah, we're all friends here. Let's be friendly.
Yeah. So to touch on what I had alluded to, first big correction, can of worms, I thought was a can of worms, opened up, dove into it a little bit last week, was the map that Justin shared, tweeting about the book signing that took place. I was convinced the pins on the map meant something. A lot of this hunt can turn you into Charlie Kelly from Always Sunny in Philadelphia when he took that job in the mailroom, if y'all are seasoned believers, and he started to come up with some crazy conspiracy theories. This can do that to you. I fell victim to that. I was educated by several listeners and commenters, thank you to y'all who did it politely, that map actually was passed around during the Q&A signing, and you were instructed to put in a pin of where you came from. So the pins represent where everyone came to the Q&A. It is not a clue by all accounts, so, my bad.
I believe I had that as well, with the pins ranging on the East Coast and all over the place. I believe I did have that. So we can move on from it, though.
All right. And then additionally, I just want to say a word of support to a Reddit user out there, 01_dark_passenger. First off, bro, if you need a hug or some help, we're here to help. He released a post, salute to Dr. Clowns for sharing it with us. The title on the subreddit r/Justin Posey's Treasure is pretty straightforward. Wife is divorcing me. And then he opens it by saying, wife is divorcing me because she thinks I've lost my mind about this treasure hunt. I've driven from Tacoma to Montana 3 times in the last week. I was unable to find it, but perhaps you will have better luck. He then goes on to share, as I said, his full solve, some very interesting thoughts and considerations. But that aside, again, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I mean, I love the passion. I respect the passion, and I hope he finds it. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be a really tough next year or two. You know what I'm saying? I really hope. I'm rooting for him. I really am.
I mean, I think he's getting divorced either way. Because she's already gone. He doesn't find it. He's wasted his time. He does find it. She's going to divorce him. Take half of it, right?
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Wow.
Sorry,
well, Godspeed, buddy.
Too dark there. But no, that said, it just illustrates y'all, if we're taking it to these levels, that's not healthy. Your family, these things take precedent, your job. But I do appreciate the passion, and I appreciate okay, he wrecked his marriage. I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe we can make some use of that destructive pieces there. I don't know. Is that too dark to say?
No. That's what this podcast is all about.
All right. Well, I just wanted to touch on that. But as promised, and as delivered now last week, there was a little bit of contention and conflict between the two hosts here, the Cowboy and I, and that was in regards to how the genesis or the birth of his theory, which, I'll call it the microscope theory of not a linear hunt. We've been discussing it ad nauseum. Instead, Cowboy contends, which I agree, I entertain the idea. I believe it has a lot of merit, that instead it is zooming in wider, then closer and closer and closer in terms of that's how you're deciphering the hunt. Well, there was contention about who inspired what. Cowboy claiming he came up with it all on his own. I contended that, baby, I was the one that inspired that. So I went back. The first inkling, the first spark of that took place in episode 9. I'm going to go ahead and play the clip now, and then I want to get your thoughts.
what he's saying, if it's not possible to answer that, then you can logically assume that like there isn't a distance between the two, the beginning and the end, right? Because if he can't give you a distance, there is no distance. What in the heck does that mean?
Yeah, the way it's structured, I mean, my first gut take is like, it means that some of the clues aren't even maybe physical locations, you know? It's just kind of maybe symbolic things to like point you in the next direction, but then at the same time, or like, I mean, this just keeps me going back to the line of the poem, like, what you seek, you already know. That line, I feel like you've always talked about the foot of 3, 20 degree, like burns a hole in your brain. You're focused on that.
Yeah.
That line to me, I'm like, what does it mean? It's telling us something about like, you know, we started off, or I don't know, dude, but it leads me to this question of kind of like, it's not a straight line. It's almost like maybe you go there and go back a little bit. You know what I mean? And that could muck up this thing. I don't know. It's such
I think it's well, see, this is where it gets tricky because we've also kind of like built this premise around it being step by step, which I'm pretty sure he's said.
Yeah.
But like, okay, like if he's saying like, let's just like, I'm not going to read the first paragraph because I think he's explicitly said the kind of like the clues start in the second stanza. So as hope surges clear and bright, walk near water's silent flight. This is where it gets interesting because people have like really held on to round the bend past the hole, capital H on the hole. I wait for you to cast your pole. Is this, yeah, are these not? Because I think we've all kind of been like, okay, like you go around the curve, then you go past this thing, a fishing hole, and then like, but maybe it's more of just like theoretically, like that stanza means a location more or less, or not like individual locations, but it's saying like essentially like that relates to an area. So it's like not like, you know, and then it's like centering in, like maybe it's like maybe it's like there's a general area and the next stanza gets smaller and smaller. So it's not like you're following a direct linear line. What is happening here?
Okay. So my reaction to that is that I just came up with that. What part of that includes you guiding me there? What are you listening to?
I literally said, like, maybe it's not linear. Maybe you have to go in and go back and totally, like, expanded your mind and your POV, dude.
I feel like the aggression in the YouTube comments in the general community is, like, spilling over into this podcast, and I'm not a fan of it. And you know what? I'll take the higher road here just so we're all I'll practice what I preach. Thank you for participating in that idea. I appreciate it.
No, I think my contention when I did re-listen to it was like, oh, it was kind of an organic back and forth, but I do think, you know, it was unearthed in that discussion. I will rescind my claim that I can't remember exactly how I said it last week, but I do think, you know, the musings, the back and forth there, if I had just been quiet and said, let's move on, do you think you would have come to that conclusion? I don't know, man. I think we were riffing, and that was some jazz we came up with. Maybe it was your instrument it ended up coming out of, but I was helping to, like, set the rhythm, baby.
Yeah. Okay. I like jazz. I'll go with that. I like to think that I'm like, yeah, like, you know, maybe I'm like, you know, I don't know, some famous jazz player, and I'm like gigging and killing it. And then you come in with like some cowbell, right? And then it helps the sound, of course, but like you're Will Ferrell just banging that cowbell, trying to get, and then Dr. Clowns is Christopher Walken coming in, and then basically it's that sketch. But okay, well, we're getting somewhere.
Hey man, when y'all leave here, y'all gonna be wearing gold-plated diapers.
Alrighty. Well, we gotta find the treasure first. We'll melt it down and make diapers.
All right, well, let's move on. Good discussion, but yeah, I guess before we do move on, what are your thoughts? Let's hear that toxicity. Feel free to unleash it here. Whose side are you on? But continuing on, the focus of today's episode is, we can call it a bombshell. I believe it warrants that discussion. I would think it's one of the most significant tweets or bits of information, I guess, status checks Justin has released up to this point. We are now, started in March, April, May, June, July. We're now 4+ months into this hunt. Big watershed moment this week when Justin, on his Twitter account, tweeted out on August 1st, 2025, several searchers have solved at least the first 2 clues, period. Some people have even been within 200 feet of the checkpoint. First reactions, Cowboy.
Yeah, my first reaction is I can't tell what the chicken or the egg is as we talk about all of these people coming up with these solves and being very outward with like how they think they found this thing, and then around the same time, like before and after people have been doing this, but then Justin comes out and says multiple people have been very close to the checkpoint, or have the first two. Where I think we're getting to that, but yes, several people have figured out the first one clues. It's interesting. It's yeah, a lot of movement. It's I think the first reaction is like, oh no, or is someone gonna find it? But at the same time, it's really exciting. And then you're like, well, there's all these solves coming out. Which one's correct? And it was kind of off the heels of those of this tweet from Justin that a couple of like particularly interesting solves came through that we had been discussing the week that, as I'd mentioned earlier, in the north of Wisdom, Montana area, that I think is pretty much getting there. And it really, and it's funny because he really outlines two clues in that lead him to the spot directly. And then now Justin's affirming that the two clues, it's interesting. A lot is going on. And I don't think there's any surprise, or I think it's connected that all of these solves are coming out on Reddit. People are posting all this stuff, and Justin is obviously he's monitoring this. I mean, people are DMing him and stuff. Something, yeah. The people are getting there. It's starting to happen a little bit, where the snowball is building as it rolls down the mountain.
Yeah, this. I mean, we've been talking about the community getting testy. I've noticed this week. I think this certainly played a part. I felt like this was like a Molotov cocktail. Created a lot of strong reactions. I saw some people contending like this is purely unfair, and I didn't want to get into the specifics because it was just too much, but like the fact that he is, I don't know if he's responding to, but that people are messaging him and he's releasing this information, he feels like it's giving an unfair advantage of like, okay, maybe you were one of the people that had emailed him this past week, and then he comes out and tweets this, like, is he clearly giving credence to yours? Is that favoritism? Is that tipping his hand? I don't know. I think he's really just trying to keep and maintain excitement and momentum. Because as we've said, I feel like the hunt is maybe losing a little momentum. So something like this, shakes up the snow globe a little bit. But I think you touched on something interesting is us as searchers, when we hear this information, how do you feel? When I feel it, I'm immediately like, oh shit. And then I'm like sad. Like I feel like, I'm not in that pool, dude. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and also that's interesting. I didn't think about him trying to shake it up a little bit because it's gone a little stale possibly, but that was kind of the theme of last week's episode. But also, I mean, maybe I'm taking it too far, but you mentioned snow globe. If this thing is in Montana or anywhere in the northern region, we don't have very much time before it gets a little too cold and a little too snowy to keep searching. So maybe he's trying to put a little more fuel in that fire and get people out there and finding it and like encouraging so people take the final few trips before, in 3 months it's too snowy and too cold to go out there and do it. Because what would put this search more on ice, pun intended, than it hitting winter?
That super interesting thought for multiple reasons in my mind. One, like you said, yes, that could be the case. But if it is the case, all of the previous answers he's given regarding snowy areas, there's been a lot of ambiguity there. I think as we actually do move into the winter season, when we know like the entire state of frickin' Montana is covered in snow right now, if he releases information about like, hey, it's still available, the rules are still valid during that time, I think that's going to really redefine a lot of rules people have set forth. Because if, let's say he comes out in the middle of December and says somebody just reached the checkpoint or something like that, you got to imagine, well, they're not in Montana in a snowy area. You know what I mean? Is that making sense? Am I connecting some dots here?
I think it makes sense. But then, yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it's fair. I don't know. I mean, the question is, what I want to ask you, kind of stepping back more generally, do you think it's in Montana? Do you think it's in a snow-covered state? Where are you at with that?
I was going to actually talk about at the end of this episode. I've, teased a lot, like, where am I looking? And I've started to hone in on an area specifically, by no means a secret or rare area, but we can kind of jump ahead to that, I guess, and tie that back in here. But I've really been drawn to that pamphlet shot in the documentary of the Waterton Lakes. You educating me that, yes, it's in Canada, but it spills into the United States. And then there was additionally, which was very serendipitous this week, a great post on the subreddit. Title was "Two Scenes with the Waterton National Park Map." One time he's putting it in a box called, quote, "detect." That's the full subject of the post if you want to go check it out. And he gives even more kind of theories, and he talks about that there's actually Waterton Valley, I believe, that runs south through all of Montana. That's where I'm focused right now, if that answers your question.
Okay, so snow is in play.
So do I believe it's in Montana? If I had to like gun to the head pick right now, yes. But I do. You made a great point about the snow coming this year. I'm really interested to see what kind of, if we get any sort of clarifications or updates during that time, because I think that's going to be very telling about this whole snow thing.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, what is, you kind of just said this, but like, what is Justin's engagement like in the winter months? I think it will tell us a lot, like, is he going to be like pumping it hard and trying to get people to go? Is he going to be enthusiastic, or is he going to tone it down a little bit? Like, we'll see that and we'll be able to know.
Yeah.
If it goes that long, who knows? Maybe the next couple of months before the snow gets found. And also then to that point, leading up to the winter, is he going to put more and more gas on the fire? Even that'll tell you if he's trying to get this thing done and ready before winter.
Well, let's go back to the tweet too, because a big points of contention are literally the wording of the tweet itself. Because as we've seen, Justin, very deliberate. A lot of times I feel like he'll set things up for people to make assumptions. Going back to my old journalism class, when it's a really cool class, they'd give you a bunch of kind of facts and information, and you'd have to write like a headline about it, and you'd always make these assumptions. It's like, that's not actually in there. But so it says, several searchers have solved the first two clues. Okay, that is a statement, clear, period. Some people have been within 200 feet of the checkpoint. So we don't know if there's an overlap. Like the several searchers that solved the first two clues, is one of them also been within 200 feet, or are those separate? Question two, before you even answer, is how does he know they've solved the clues? Is those the people that DM'd him, emailed him, or is he seeing shit on Reddit?
I think one, I'm sure he's getting a bunch of DMs. Obviously, I think people will never stop reaching out to him.
I've heard like hundreds.
Yeah, I'm sure he's getting hit up all the time. Does he read all of them? I would imagine he would. He's really invested in this. Why wouldn't you? Why else would you do this if you didn't want to like pay attention and be involved? But and to that point, I do think he's on Reddit and he is seeing these solves, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he read one of these like potential solves, these theoretical solves people have, and he's like, wow, that's interesting. But that brings it back to this point about the user or the listener to our podcast that posted his YouTube video in our last episode's comments, and he gave a 40-minute like PowerPoint presentation on where he believes this is, and he's been out there multiple times to this very specific area looking for it. That to me, like if Justin sees something like that, he knows that the guy's been there, so he could say, oh, he's within 200 feet of the checkpoint. He knows because he's seen this video that this guy took and shared. It could be either of these things. We won't know until we know. It's all speculation.
Yeah, there's a lot of interpretation, and I mean, the last time with Fenn's hunt, it was, someone's been within 200 meters of the treasure, but he's just saying 200 meters of the checkpoint. The one takeaway I have from this is like the checkpoint, to me, it seems unequivocally is a physical location. That because if you can be within 200 meters of it, like that's the only way to say that. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm assuming. Yeah.
Well, the fact that he puts a physical radius on it or whatever. So.
Yeah. I feel like that could be, man, when that domino falls and somebody unequivocally shares the checkpoint. If they share the checkpoint, I don't know why you would share the checkpoint if you're that close. Of course, you're not going to try to broadcast to the world, but if it does happen, that's going to be the next like whole crap moment,
See, but that's where I'm on the side of like, that's a little unfair. Like if he's getting DMs and it's like, oh, here I am, and I found the checkpoint, Justin, and then he comes out and says someone found the checkpoint. To me, like that's under the table type of behavior. You know what I mean? Like I think we need to be all cards on the table, open. I think at that point he should reveal that information. Like to me, I don't know. I'm getting a little pissed off. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I do think there is something there to the idea like there's a little inequity going on if these back channel conversations are informing things. I don't know. Where do you fall on that?
I don't know. I think I kind of fall back on like Justin's been pretty transparent with this. And he has shown, at least publicly, that he's not entertaining like specialized relationships or like giving clues to like I'm gonna like kind of try to step away from that and just assume positive intent, that I don't want to go down that negative rabbit hole. There's too much, as we talk about, crazy negativity in some weird ways on this. I'm not gonna start doubting the guy that made this whole thing. Seems like
Yeah.
a bad direction for your brain to go. But yes, if he is, that sucks.
I don't know about doubting. I just think that there's, things to contend with. But again, I don't know. And we don't know when did he receive this notification that someone's been within 200 meters? Has he been sitting on this, or this is a new development and he just decided August 1st, that's the day I'm going to tweet this information? I don't know. Just more ambiguity, which we're already used to on this conversation. But before we move on, I wanted to circle back. You keep alluding to a solve you saw. You said it was on Reddit. That's very aligned with your solve. Are you going to share more information on that, or that's an offline thing? Because I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking what you're referring to there.
Yeah. So this gentleman on YouTube, his name is Tucker, ironically, TUCK number 3R. He commented on our last episode 12. And he basically laid out in a video that he linked, which you should go back and watch. It's called Actual Full Solve for Beyond the Map's Edge by Justin Posey. And he put together a 41-minute PowerPoint presentation that runs through essentially where he believes this to be. And it's extremely detailed. And I'm not going to be able to go through all the details of this. Again, it's a 41-minute video. But it is essentially right above Wisdom, Montana. It kind of follows, like, what would be the area? It's above Wisdom. You really need to watch there's all these little towns and stuff that aren't going to do anybody any good. But there's just a lot of little things that he lines up that I thought were absolutely fascinating. Some of them are a bit more of a stretch than others, but one of the really interesting things that he dives into that I thought was crazy is that there is a hotel, I believe it is. It's like a very fancy hotel that when you look out of this hotel from like the main window, it overlooks this lake. And the view from the hotel, he side by sides that image, a photo taken from that area, side by sides it with the Beyond the Map's Edge book cover. And it is strikingly similar. It's pretty unbelievable how, if you were to draw a picture of this photo in this area, it would be the Beyond the Map's Edge cover. And I think that's where I first was like, oh, wow, that is pretty compelling. He goes into much more detail through the second and third and fourth stanza, all the details of it. I would highly recommend, if you're very serious about this, watching the video. But I'm not going to go step by step what he puts together because it is very detailed and it would take about 40 minutes. But he ultimately finds what he believes to be return her face to find the place. There's a lake associated with that. There's like a shape to it that it's all kind of there. And he brings you to the edge of this area where he's like, this is where I think it's somewhere around here, but I'm not exactly sure where. So I'm going to leave this here for everyone to find, and highly recommend going back and watching that video. Maybe put the link to this in the show notes. Very compelling, cool video. He does a very good job of piecing it together, and I like the way he thinks. And it's kind of in that general area that I was pushing, but I couldn't take it any further. He takes it a bit further. So I'm all about it. And I don't think this gentleman, I believe it's a gentleman, has shared his name, but his YouTube name is Tucker. Instead of an E, it's with a 3. So very compelling.
Yeah, the comment came from, oddly enough, Gold and Generosity, but yeah, it linked, he said, my channel, and then he linked to the video, which was published under the channel, as you said, Tucker, TUCK3R. I assume they're both the same person, but regardless, shout out to whomever you are for sharing this information, for taking the time to put together the detailed video, and we love this type of stuff. And as you said, we've unearthed some compelling insights. I haven't even looked through the video yet, full disclosure from my side, but I do know exactly what you're talking about in terms of like the silhouette shape on the book versus, overlooking there. I think I'd seen that on Reddit previously. So I love that. This is what this community is about. It's crowdsourcing and, taking what you can personally find meaningful. He also touches on, stuff about the Volkswagen bug. Like we said, is that a clue on the lawyer's desk? So compelling stuff. Check it out. I was just going to try and pin it on our comments and YouTube. I feel like you were used to be able to do that. I can't do that anymore. But go through our YouTube, check it out, give him some likes. Salute to you. As I alluded to, also the person emailing from the UK, her name is Lauren, talking about her boyfriend. She did give permission for us to review her solve that she shared, so we'll go through that, I believe, at some point in the future.
Are they getting a divorce? Oh, they're not married. Got it.
Yeah, boyfriend, and they're not in the United States. They're in the UK, I believe. But that's where you're focused. As I said, I'm focused on the Waterton Lakes area, but the big thing I've been running into, the big barrier is when you head immediately south of Waterton Lake and immediately get into the United States, you are immediately in Glacier National Park, which by all accounts on my research is a pay-to-enter national park, which and then should preclude it. So I'm struggling with okay, Waterton Lake, but not in Glacier. Where are we at? That said, I'm drawn to the area. I think that pamphlet in the dock, it just seems so intentional. I don't think it had any relation to Forrest Fenn's hunt at all. So why is he purposely staging that in there? It also, Beyond the Map's Edge, part of it's in Canada. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. No concrete leads from there, but love this information. Love the positivity. And, even the guys that were out there negative, I love you too, because you listened and you took time to engage, so that helps the algorithm.
Yeah, that's the position I've always taken. I'm glad that you're finally coming around. I think that maybe I'll clip that next week so you can respond to me pushing you in that direction.
I would love that if you came to one of these episodes and said, hey, you know what? I got something to bring to the table. That'd be great.
Wow. I'm just going to step back from that and let our listeners defend me in the YouTube comments here, because that's over the line.
All right. Well, we love y'all. This is going to conclude our episode. Where are you at with this bombshell? Did that shake things up from you, Justin, revealing this? Does that make you feel like you got to quit? You're so far behind. Somebody's already 200 meters and you haven't even made a boot mark on the ground. I'm certainly not, Cowboy. I'm still going. Yeah, maybe they're 200 meters from the checkpoint, but they ain't at the checkpoint. And most importantly, they ain't at that treasure, baby.
Not yet, but they're getting close. So for the sake of this podcast, let's hope they don't find it.
Yeah, we got to catch up. We're going to need some help to do that, I think. But that is going to conclude us here on episode 13. Hopefully, 13 typically unlucky. Hopefully this is a lucky one for us. We make some breakthroughs. But we will talk to y'all next episode. And until then, any final thoughts there, Cowboy?
Oh man, my final thoughts are go watch the YouTube video. We're gonna link it in our show notes. Yeah, I'm kind of encouraged by all these solves. It's fun when they're legitimate, compelling solves to see how it's working, because it opens your mind. And I'm gonna probably spend the next week kind of. There was a few I didn't even get to. I was so busy with all these other ones that I want to check out, and hopefully, it'll be really mind bending when you have 2 or 3 that you fully believe in and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's Cowboy's final thoughts. My final thoughts are, if you're out there, guy, go apologize to your wife. Make it right. Reconcile that, baby. And get a prenup if you do think you're going to find it.
Absolutely. Yeah, take her with you. Take her on a trip.
Take her on yeah, exactly. Get her involved.
Make it a family affair. But
for all you other folks out there, keep going, keep searching, and happy hunting.
And stay safe. And married.
Yeah.